right, good morning, everybody. Let me see if I think I've got this little thing set up right. So, okay, I'm a little bit technically challenged here, like a lot of boomers. So, anyway, welcome, and good morning. And what we're going to do this morning is we're really going to try to give you some idea about how a lot of the things that we're looking at are changing, and what they're doing is shifting from one known to one unknown area of social change and generational shifting. And I think the most important part that we're going to talk about is what effect are these changes having? Because it's not like we just woke up on Tuesday and we looked around and we said, wow, things are changing. That kind of happens. I think what we're doing now is we're realizing that change has been ongoing and we're starting to see more of the effects of that change. So here's what we're going to do. Let me give you kind of the outline, and we're going to go maybe 45 minutes to an hour. I got a lot of stuff to cover here. We are recording, so we'll be able to have this up on the YouTube channel. What we're going to do is we're going to cover is three things. We're going to cover the mass social shifting and impacts from mass society to network society. And that's a real big deal, and probably in some areas that you haven't even considered. The second thing is we're going to talk about changes in trends. These are the trends and changes, or what we call shifting, from the generational influences. And I'm going to get a little bit deep into that because a lot of your investment ideas, a lot of your investment strategies, a lot of your business modeling, probably looking at it now, may need to be considered in terms of remodeling or retooling some of those ideas and some of those things that we've been doing. And the number three, your actual business or your side gig, your investment portfolio, your real estate, all of these sort of make up the composition of the financial net, if you will, of our income, our investments, retirement, and all of the things that really go to the issue of how is this affecting me financially. Let's talk a little bit first about the generational shifts, and I'll give you a little bit of information. I've got some studies that we've been working on for about 5 years, a couple of research papers. I've got some articles up in the group that you can download. I'm going to break the generations down into basically 5 groups, and depending on what set of data that you're looking at, the years that define each generation are going to vary a little bit, because some studies and some research papers include what are called cuspers. A cusper is somebody that's born in a certain generation plus or minus 5 years of the next generation. They're on the cusp of that next generation. And so our research material comes from reliable sources that use or inclusive of the cusper groups in each of the generational demographic compositions. We start with the silent generation. Those were the people that were born between 1905 and 1945. There was 52.5 million live births in that generational group, and a lot of the reasons that they were called the silent generation is that they were too young to go fight in World War II and didn't have much to say, and so somehow it got stuck with a label that they were the silent generation. The next generation are the boomers. I'm a boomer. And that generation was born plus or minus 5 years for cuspers, the 1945 to 1965. And we had 78.2 million live births. Just to give you a little footnote, starting January 1st of 2020, last year, 11 million boomers are turning, no, 11,000 boomers are turning age 65 every day starting January 1st of last year. 11,000 a day started turning 65. And when I talk about social insecurity, I'm going to talk about the impact that this is going to have on millennials, because there's a train wreck coming that nobody's expecting in terms of the Social Security funding, and this is being driven a lot by this shift of this generation turning age 65 starting last year. Gen Xers. These were the human beings, being human, that were born between 1965 and 1985. And what's interesting is we had 69.5 million fewer births than the previous generation of boomers. In other words, there were about 10 million fewer human beings. That was a reversal. We went down instead of up. And we're now seeing the effects of the economy. We're seeing the effects of business because of this shortfall of Gen Xers in disrupting the population growth patterns that we've seen. Then we move to Gen Y, 1985 to 2005, 94.9 million live births in that generational period. These were the tech-savvy hipster millennials that were born with being in the network, or the start of the network shifting of our social changes. And so for them to adapt and adopt, it's pretty easy. They're pretty flexible. Unlike a boomer like me, where I still struggle trying to figure out email. And so what happens is these impacts by these generations and what they're doing in their choices are creating monumental shifts, but at the same time, they're creating monumental opportunities, which I'll get to. Then we'll talk about Gen Z. These were the people that are being born between 2005 and forward out to 2025. And so far, that population group as of last year totaled 88.9 million live births. And the thing that is interesting is that over the last 10 years, we've actually seen a decline in positive birth rates that are affecting the generational shifts. And in about another 10 years, I think we're going to see a huge paradigm shift in just how that data is being compiled. All right, so why does this matter? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, whatever generational group that you're in, it's going to matter because you have a very unique perspective of the world. I grew up, in the 60s, the Vietnam era, the protest, all of the things that were going on. And my perspective of the world is going to be very different than somebody that was born in 1985. And even the language, the communication, the life choices are critically very different. And these things have an effect and an impact on the socioeconomics that we have and the choices that we make, down to the investment vehicles. I just watched a Bloomberg news thing this morning, and they're talking about this ESG factor of how stocks are now being evaluated based on the socioeconomic groups, based on the demographic groups, and based on the social impacts that publicly traded companies are having. And I got to tell you that for the last 3 years, those that have this ESG index have outperformed all of the indexes and are pretty profitable companies. And when you look at that, you can see that the choices that they're making in running their companies in a public company are being guided by these same forces. It's not that we wake up and we recognize one day, man, things have changed. I mean, change is constant. We're always going through. And you have three types of awareness about that change. You're either an early adopter and you're ahead of that cresting wave, or you're at the top of the wave recognizing that you're catching up and you better get in and take advantage of it, or you're on the other side of the wave that is crushing the shore. Hopefully you're not there, and the change has already come and the next wave is coming. And so this is critical in terms of the choices that you make about your business, about your real estate, about your portfolio, your retirement plan. All of these things are being affected by these generational shifts. Okay? The social shifts are quite a different story. We're moving, continuing to move away from a mass society to that of a network society. No clearer example of the impacts that this is than we can see from the experience of COVID, right? And the thing about it is that we've realized by circumstance, as tragic as they were for a lot of lives, we've realized that we can work remotely. In other words, I've been working remotely with an office in my home for 10 years, and still had another office where clients could come and go. Clients don't come to our office anymore because we're doing all of this remote stuff, and we've got networks, and we've got videos and Zoom and Google Meet, and our phone. Our phone has more shit on it than we could count. And if you had to buy all of those different things, you'd have a pile of stuff that you'd buy that's all on your phone. And we're getting more network with 5G. We're getting more network in how we connect and stay connected. And that's creating this shift of social shift of how our society is modeling. And that modeling is not about your business plan, it's about your business itself. And I'll get to that in today's presentation. You really have to take a look at how you've been looking at your business, how you've been looking at your investments, how you've been looking at your retirement and your financial life and planning from the perspective that you had without this kind of awareness, and then having this awareness change your point of view and your perspective to be more inclusive of maybe some other options you want to start considering so that you're not on the other side of that wave when it hits the shore. Making up for lost time can be done, but boy, is it a heavy lift, and it's a pain in the ass when you've got to start accelerating things that, you've got to make up for 5 years that you've lost in time. At some point, you're not going to be able to make up for lost time. And so what we're trying to do right now is really take all of this information, break it down into some easy to understand bites, and communicate, and then help be a positive support of that change and that shift. Okay? Now, one of the things that we can look about moving from mass society to a network society, beyond just the example that I gave of networking and working remotely, you're going to see a lot of these strip malls and these small office buildings becoming functionally obsolete in the next 5 to 10 years. Take nursing homes. Nursing homes, basically, we had in the country, I think last count at the end of 2019 was about a little north of 20,000 nursing homes, okay? Pretty much you can bet that those are all functionally obsolete because boomers, people like me that are in boomer generation, I ain't going to a nursing home. I'll die in my backyard. I'll die in my office at home. I am not going to a nursing home. So you're going to have all this nursing home property that's going to be functionally obsolete. Take the malls, the super malls. Remember, those were the big deal in the 80s. Man, it was not only is a mall good, but now we got to build a super mall. Jeez. They're all going to be functionally obsolete. I can get stuff from Amazon and have it here at 2 o'clock today on my front door, and I don't have to go to traffic, right? And you can do the same thing. And what's happening is that we're discovering that the last mile to get a product to a consumer is the most expensive model. So what you're going to see is you're going to see these malls and these super malls being reconfigured. Here in San Diego, they're blowing up Jack Murphy Stadium, which became Qualcomm, and then I think it became something else. I got so confused. But anyway, they're tearing it down, and it's going to be something completely different. In the Fashion Valley and Mission Valley Mall, man, their days are numbered. Look at Horton Plaza. They spent billions of dollars building Horton Plaza, and then when they finally got it all done and you figured out whether you were on the tomato or the cucumber parking level. I mean, I don't eat veggies that much, and so I get confused about parking. And so what happens is all of this is changing. And now we've got a bunch of real estate that needs to be reconfigured because they're going to have to be turned into fulfillment centers. They're going to have to be turned into micro communities. We're talking about micro communities, and the stuff I'm going to share with you will blow your mind about how that's changing. Because this generation of Gen Y and Z, you take 94.9 and 88.9 million human beings, that's more than half of the country, the population of this country. And they have a very different view of the world. They have a very different appetite for what they have. When they buy a house at that stage, when they finally decide to buy a house, you know what? That 53% of them don't even care if it has a living room. I mean, really? And if you're in the real estate business and you think, oh, it's a nice living room and a great room and a family room, you know what? That generation is not going to like that. That's not what they're looking for. And so if you don't know this and you start thinking, oh, I got a good living room in my listing, no. Who's your in buyer? If it's a boomer, they're wanting less space, not more. And if it's a Gen Y, they're wanting more space, not less. But they want the space configured a different way. And so all we're trying to do is just give you a little bit of awareness, a little bit of more information to ponder and to contemplate and to think. Should I start looking at things from a different point of view? Because it's going to affect me one way or the other. Better I be on the cusp of the change than on the shore when the wave hits, right? All right. So, moving on. The changes in trends that are happening just as a natural order of any society, okay? Nothing new about any of this. What's different is that COVID really amped up and forced into this rapid, more accelerated influence of change, i.e., businesses now figuring out, from public companies to the mom and pop down in your neighborhood, that they can do a lot of stuff remotely. Maybe they don't need that lease. Maybe they don't need as much space, okay? And so when we look at these kinds of influences and those are affecting our bottom line, I'm going to tell you, at some point you got to start asking the question, is $60,000 or $70,000 a year for rent carry something that I want to continue to eat when I can put that into pay increases, raising the standard of living for my team, give them more benefits, not less, and not have to pay rent? I mean, these are things that you should look at, because if you're saving $70,000 a year in rent carry, then you've got the extra bandwidth to give that incentive financially to those folks that are carrying the heavy load building the business, okay? And so all of these have a force dynamic. A force dynamic is the changes that are happening create such amount of energy and force that it accelerates the change. And so what we're seeing now is more evidence of how these changes have taken hold. And what we look to are the shifting trend analysis. We can look to shifting trend analysis to tell us, to some degree, pretty reliably, given all that we know in the data set, looking forward the next 3, 5, 7, or 10 years, where likely could we be? And it's pretty exciting. I mean, if you're a millennial right now, you got to be ramped up and amped up, ready to go, because it's pretty exciting. The challenge is, how do you position? How do you get ahead so that you're an early adopter and not a late receiver when the wave's crashing on the shore? You're in one of those three areas of the wave. Why does this matter? Well, I think it matters because it affects our life, directly or indirectly. It affects how our decisions are made, directly or indirectly. It affects maybe some of the choices and decisions that we would have otherwise not have made, but for the fact that we now have new information that we can take into consideration. I always believe that things in life are not right or wrong, good or bad. I think things are things. The shit happens. We all have stuff that happens. It's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. The question is it working or is it not working? And if things that you're doing are not working, it may be because your perspective is a little bit less inclusive of some of these changes, and you're feeling that angst or that anxiety of this disruption. It's been pretty disruptive for the last year with COVID. And tragically, like I said, and God bless all of those souls, for the people that have lost their life, it's just we've got to look at the effect that's already in place, because it's not going back. I mean, those that hail the grand old days, you know, I don't know what to tell you. Just suck it up and have a cocktail, because stuff is moving forward, and we got to figure out where we're at. Who is affected? Everybody. Everybody is affected. It just depends on what generation group you're in and what generation group that is affecting the things that you're doing most. And I tell a lot of our clients, we've got a lot of clients in the real estate industry, both as investors and as professionals. And I tell them, man, you have got to know who your tenant is. You have got to know who your buyer is. You have got to know who your seller is. If you don't know that and what generation group they're in, you're missing opportunity. I'm going to give you some examples how you can increase rents like that. And I can give you some examples how you can increase rents and the government will pay for half of it. I mean, geez. I mean, come on. This is like free cash in the things that you can do. All right, where do we look? We start looking first within. Where am I financially today? Where is my business? Where is my job? Where is my side gig? Where is my investment portfolio? Where is my retirement? Where am I in the world financially, and all the things that affect me directly with my money and my choices? If you can see where you're at, and you can take some of this information in and just expand your horizon of view, right? We're not telling you to do this or think that. Just open up and see a little bit more of the world around us. Sometimes we get so fixed into blah, 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 you know. All this shit's going on, and we're not paying attention to just the obvious stuff. So in relation to you, because that's the only person that matters at the end of the day, I'm the only person that matters to me, it really is, where are you at, and where do we look in terms of all of those choices that we have financially? And then from there, when can we look to create the opportunity, or when can we look to get where we're at? We're either behind the wave. As an early adopter, we're on top of the wave making the shift, or we're at the other side of the wave when the wave hits the shore and change has passed us by because we weren't paying attention. No one person, me included, has all the answers. I've got more questions, trust me, than I ever have answers. But I have different questions, and the are, how does this affect the clients that we serve? How does this affect the families that depend on a paycheck that work for our company? How does this affect our personal life and the choices that we're making about whether we're going to invest in this neighborhood or invest in that stock? It has a huge choice power of influence in our choices, because if we don't know or can't recognize these changes taking place, we could make a financial choice or decision that could be pretty devastating because we didn't see something that we didn't see. And so as we take in the fact that we're going through social shifting from mass society to network society, the social media, the work, the consumer impacts, banking, investing, we're moving from a metro regional to a rural non-regional, and evidence of how these changes have been, just look at the taxi industry, yellow cab. I mean, there was never a city that you couldn't go to, especially New York, where you'd go to New York City and just a sea of yellow cab, right? Have you ever seen a yellow cab lately? It just they all kind of went away. Um, Uber and Lyft and those kinds of business models are an example of disruptive change in our social and economic structure. And right now, I can get on and get an Uber and it'll be in my driveway in like 4 minutes. Why do I need a car? Maybe I don't need a car. I don't know. And these things affect. Watch how many car lots, used in new car lots, close up in the next 5 years. All right? Watch how many of them go away. I can order a car on the internet and have it delivered tomorrow. Why would I go down and deal with a salesperson? I can buy a house and get a virtual tour. Why would I deal with a real estate agent? Right? This is some of the examples of how this change has already happened, and it's just going to get deeper, and it's just going to be more magnifying. And so we've got an opportunity to capitalize on that by taking advantage of where we're at in each generational group and figuring out how can we leverage like a fulcrum and capitalize on creating new opportunity that will give us some of the things that we desire financially. Generational shift is adding acceleration to the impacts of the social shifts. Boomers and Gen Xers have the most dramatic impacts as to certain parts of our economy, particularly with retirement. Here's one of the problems that government agencies from your local, county, state, all the way up to federal government. One of the impacts of this shift with Gen Xers having 10 million fewer human beings is as boomers retire, there's not enough Gen Xers to replace, and they're going to be retiring soon. And basically, Gen X and Gen Y, they have a very different view of the world than the boomer generation. Gen Y, man, they want flexibility. They want to travel. They want to have experience. They could care less about your elevator having music. They could care less about all of these other things, because for them, it's really the experience that they're looking for. They're mobile. They can pivot. They're flexible. So they don't even care if you have a closet in the place that you're renting. They really don't. I mean, so when you look at this stuff, and you got to think to yourself, how is this going to change how I see where I put my money, where I invest my money, and how I'm going to keep my business? And it has a dramatic impact on all of those things that we're doing. Let me just talk a little bit about the concerns for boomers, Gen Xers, and Gen Y, because they all have a different, what we call elevated primary focus. That elevated primary focus are the things that are most important generally in that population group, the things that they're concerned with. And depending on who your tenant is, depending on who your employee is, depending upon who your customer is, depending upon who your buyer-seller is, in what generational group they're in and what generational group you're in, you may not even be connecting to even have a conversation. Because you're thinking that, well, it's got, I remember back in the day selling real estate, it was like the big thing was a big backyard. Everybody had to have a big backyard. That's not how it works anymore. Boomers really have that primary concern at retirement, health, transportation, travel, and housing. That's really the top list of things that go through their mind before they start departing with their money in anything. Gen Xers, it's retirement, housing, transportation, education, and the environment. And I think it was 1969 when we had the Green Earth thing started, and I think it was 69 or 70, can't remember now. And it's a bigger deal now than it's ever been. It's a big deal, and the things that we have in a social impact in terms of where you invest your money, a lot of this hip generation is not investing money in companies that have a big, ugly brown carbon footprint, right? Okay, so that has a impact on the things that we're going to be doing. If our money's tied up in a retirement account in one of those dirty carbon companies, if you will, then those companies are going to be on the short end, and their stock's going to be shorted, and then there goes your retirement plan. Gen Wires, it's travel, flexibility, and environment. Man, and there's not five, it's three. And those three, I mean, that's really their focus. And if you don't see the effect of those choices and how they're playing out, then start looking around at just some of the things that we have been talking about today. Once we have this presentation done today, what we'll do is we'll go in and we're going to edit it out and put a couple of more things in that'll give you some other things to be looking at. And in the resource material, next week we'll have that completed, so it'll be able to have the video with the resource material. I'm putting some links in there just so you can go check some of this stuff out. Do your own research. Don't take my word. Don't take anybody's word. Do your own research. I'm just telling you where to look and what to look at, and you might want to consider incorporating some of that view in terms of making your choices and your decisions. All right, let's talk about work career, the remote work, and the housing, transportation, and wired. Let's take the millennial generation. It's mobility. It's walkability. They care more about the not having two parking spaces, but can we use one of the parking spaces for my Amazon and my Uber, right? And so when let's say you have rental property, I'm going to tell you, a year ago, we just closed escrow on a 4-unit over on Mohawk. It's the Mohawk property. Went in, did a bunch of renovation, some tear out, upgraded. And the cool thing about that, we got almost a 28% increase in the rent. Here's what we did. We gave all the tenants this new configuration of space because we've got new tenants now. And what we did is we give them one price. We took all the utility costs, water, sewer, trash, gas, and lights. We took a little bit of the wear and tear because we made this really cool upgraded laundry room. And they want amenities, okay? They want cool stuff, and they don't want to have a lot of stuff and transferring the title on this and getting this in my name. And so we took whatever those costs were and increased them by 1.5 times, just for the cost of inflation and just carrying all of the accounting stuff. And now, when they pay rent, they get one price, and it includes everything. It includes everything. The next step that we're doing is we're putting solar on the roof, and I'm going to show you that you can increase your rent and increase your profit if you do this strategically. Right now, for every $10,000 in solar that you put on your rental, you're going to get 2 direct benefits that will put money in your pocket. One, 26% of the total cost, including the labor cost, is going to be in the form of a tax credit on your tax return. Okay, 26%. So that's $2,600 if it's 10 grand for the solar. Second, just figure you're in a weighted average of about a 30% tax bracket, okay? Solar equipment is depreciated over a useful life of 5 years, not 7, 10, and 15, 5 years. A special carve out in the tax code about 10 years ago allowed that. And on a straight line method, you take $10,000, you can take it all in 1 year also. You can do that election. So that $10,000 is going to save you another $3,000 in tax. $3,000 in tax and a $2,600 tax credit is $5,600 for $10,000 of solar. The government just paid for half of the solar. Now your tenants have a green environment. They have green energy. You now have it wired with 5G. What do you care that you're paying the gas and light bill? What do you care because you're generating the solar? And so now you get the tax credit on the one side, you increase your cash flow on the other side, your balance sheet looks better because you've got an improvement. You've got an amenity that people will look for, and they don't mind paying a higher rent. They even say that. We don't mind paying higher rent. I just want one price. And so you just shift your thinking about how you invest your money. And if you've got rentals, modeling is what we're talking about. Taking this information and modeling it in a way that allows you to take advantage and leverage these changes so that you can be ahead of that wave and not on the shore when it crashes down. That's just one example. When we get ready to go into June and those leases are all going to be renewed, we've got the rest of the stuff done. The laundry is free. It's a nice, cool laundry room, brand new energy efficient machines. We're putting a water reclamation to take the gray water and then use that for the landscaping. And all of these little things are the little nuances that give you the premium. And when you do this, there are huge tax incentives that will actually pay for you to do this. When we're talking about modeling, this is what we're talking about. Who is your tenant, your ideal tenant? You know, Mohawk is on a main, right off of one block off of a main artery. It's 5 minutes from San Diego State. Who do you think part of our tenants are going to be? Students at San Diego State, for God's sake. And if you have a little shuttle thing and you have one of the parking spaces in the back set aside for your Amazon and your Uber and all of that, I mean, it's totally cool. And they feel like you really care because we really do care. And so these are the kinds of things that give you the premium in terms of your capital working and getting a good return. And at the same time, you're getting some huge tax incentives to do this. This is what we're talking about, how these changes can affect the choices that you make and about how you're investing or where you're investing. Let's talk about another change in terms of just your business. I've got some clients right now that are in the boomer generation, and these people are just smart as a whip in terms of what they know, their life experience, the things that they've been able to do in life and creating successful businesses, and they're a little scared. They're a little scared because now, you know, they're having to make up for some lost time. Maybe their retirement plan, you know, it turned out to be a shitty plan because, you know, the stock market this and the stock market that. Maybe they had the wrong advisor or I don't know. They're scared because they're recognizing and realizing that they're not tech savvy. They struggle. I mean, their idea of tech savvy, you could illustrate in You Got Mail, right? That movie, Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, right? And AOL. That's really a boomer's concept of technology, and it's locked in. It hasn't evolved much. I mean, I'm not being critical. I'm just telling you how shit works. And so when you're talking about a boomer doing a Zoom meeting, they have no frickin' clue what the hell you're even talking about. And a lot of them are afraid that when the camera's going on, that you're seeing everything in their computer. They have no concept of how things work. Here's what they do have. They have a life of experience running the collision shop. They have a life of experience building a flower shop, a bakery. They have a life of experience in their own gig and their own business. What they can do, and what we are doing for some of them, is creating a mentoring modeling program where they can mentor this other generation and give them some of that life skill, transfer some of that practical everyday stuff that maybe we don't figure out. And here's the cool thing. The hip tech generation can mentor them about how to turn the camera on. I mean, I sat here this morning trying to test this thing, and then I figured out, hey, you got to plug the thing into the side thing here, right? That's why I couldn't see my thing on the camera. It's just, they struggle the boomer generation struggles because they're locked in. Their concept of technology is locked into AOL, and you've got Mail and Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. And not much has changed, right? Not much has had to change, but now they recognize change is happening. It's gone on for a long time, and maybe I got to play catch up on this thing. When they're downsizing their Rancho Santa Fe 5,700 square foot, 4-car garage, quarter acre, whatever, and they're looking for something else, God bless their hearts, but realtors and real estate agents and brokers don't have a clue about some of the stuff and it's just like, that's not what they're looking for. And if you can't have that conversation, they're going to go somewhere else to get what they want or what they desire. And so I caution all real estate professionals, all real estate investors, you really got to know who your buyer and seller are. You really got to know who your tenant is. You really got to know what generation they're in, because if you're promoting big living room, I mean, you're turning off half your market right there, because they don't care about a big living room. When we put an ad up, I swear to God, we put an ad up, 5G, wired, free cable, free gas and lights, free utilities, free water, sewer, trash, Amazon Park, and blah, blah. Bam! I mean, bam, we had it done. And a premium rent. We're getting more rent per square foot on that property than anybody in that neighborhood. Not because we're better, not because we're smarter, because we know the tenant, because we know the things that they want, and because we know that we can bundle these things. We can get the government to pay for half of it with tax incentives, and that's the highest and best use of the real estate. And to do that and be able to help people do that, that's really where we're moving, to give that information relevance so that you can take it and then go apply it and see how it works for you. It may work differently for you than it works for us. That doesn't make it right or wrong. We got to quit looking at things being right or wrong. Things are different. There's no right or wrong to anything. It's just different. All right, now, where do we look for opportunity? And where do we look for this change? Again, start with yourself. Where are you today financially? Where is your retirement? Where's your investments? Where's your real estate, your home? All of these things give you this context and perspective of where you are in relation to the world around you. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You're the only person that matters. In my life, I'm the only person that matters to me. And wherever you are, the next question is really, where do you want to be with your investment property? If you're getting into, if you've got 6 or 7 rentals right now, and you've had them for 3 or 4 or 5 years or more, I'm going to suggest, I'm not going to say you're doing anything right or wrong, I'm just going to suggest you're not maximizing your asset that could be working like you can't possibly believe for you. You work hard for your money to get to a point where your money can start working hard for you. And if you're underutilizing your capital, underutilizing your resources, and underutilizing your investment opportunities, then it's not the highest and best use of your capital. And you will be caught sideways one day where you're going to have to make up for lost time, and you're not going to be on that crest of the change or the pivot to be able to make the change or adopt as an early adopter the change that is coming. Because it's happening. Societies always change. So that's where I would suggest where we look. We've got some cool assessment tools. I'll be talking about those next week, and putting some stuff up there. These assessment tools took a lot of time and a lot of professionals to help us develop these things, and they're free to you to use. If they help give you some idea about how to go about the process of doing that assessment, then God bless you. Go and have fun and use them. What we're trying to do at this point right now is put enough relevant information up there for you to enjoy and take advantage of, but really have the big picture. This is really about getting you to see that the world around you and your relationship to that world around you needs to be something that maybe you look at from a different perspective. Because if you don't, and you get caught sideways financially, the older that you are, the harder it is to swallow the pill, making up for lost time. Because eventually you have an expiration date, in case somebody didn't remind you. And that is called your funeral. And that's going to happen regardless. And what you want to do if you're creating a legacy, what you want to do if you're creating financial security, what you want to do is understand that you got a little heavy lifting, and you might have to change a few of the things that you're looking at and look at them from a different perspective, because all things are not equal. All things are not fair. All things are all things. That's all they are. Until you put a label on them, that's what they are. They're things. What you're looking at doing is giving yourself that opportunity to pivot and stay ahead of the cresting wave. You're either behind it or on top of it. You never want to be on the shore when it hits, because you're not going to make up for that lost time. All right, let me give you another example. And this is kind of cool. I remember back in the day here in San Diego, I grew up in Barrio Logan. And what was cool about growing up in Barrio Logan is, the simplest things you could find to do to have fun as a kid, right? And I remember this is when Mission Valley was we could go down there in the little river that ran through there and look for crawdads. I mean, there was no malls or freeways, 805 or whatever, 405 Connect, whatever. And I looked at all of those changes that have happened over the year, and we lived in an area right off of Imperial Avenue, and I remember we would see the Miller dairy truck that would come through in the morning and then come back in the afternoon. And every once in a while, we were, I was the oldest of 10 kids, and every once in a while, we'd have this really cool opportunity that the Miller dairy guy would drop off a rack of the milk in the bottles, and we'd have fresh milk. I mean, back in the day, fresh milk was a big deal, trust me. And so we had, once in a while, we'd get the fresh milk thing. And I remember what was so cool about the fresh milk being delivered was it was in these racks and these bottles, and then we could have the fresh milk, and it was so cool. And then we'd put the racks back in the next day, and then in the afternoon, if there were rack bottles in the porch and they'd come back, they'd pick them up and then leave your dry goods. So you'd have the beans and the rice and I mean, we're poor family, living in the barrio. We're just trying to figure it out. But that was still kind of cool to have that treat. And here I am today in my 60s, and I'm living in a world that just some days you just try to figure out, just like, what the hell's going on? And what is so cool is I can still do that today. Amazon will bring me fresh milk on my doorstep this morning. There it is. I mean, it's like, man, how cool is that? And so what we're seeing is we have this opportunity, this nostalgia, if you will, and that's a big deal that's driving a lot of this force of change. When you get the opportunity to connect, and you get the opportunity to see and experience the kinds of shift in a way that you don't have to be afraid of it. Fear is an emotion, and it's not real in terms of the practical application. Oftentimes we're afraid because we don't know. And I think for boomers, the biggest struggle right now is they feel trapped. And they feel like they can't move without everything blowing up. And I think this is where Gen X and the millennials can be a huge lift. You can set up your side gig to do a mentoring gig, and I guarantee you, you'd have to work hard not to make at least $40,000 a year, taking what you already know how to do and turn that into a mentoring platform. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a blip of not so much an ad. We have a mentoring credentialing program that we're going to be releasing in mid-April, first part of May. And it's going to take people through a process, how, 6 weeks, how to be an effective mentor. And when I say 6 weeks, I don't mean like it's every day. Oh shit, I got, blah blah blah. No, I'm talking about a half an hour a day of work assignments, and once a week in a virtual training environment for a couple of hours, and develop the skill sets and develop the resources that you can actually go say, hey, I can mentor you in doing that. And I swear to God, I'm going to tell you, I swear to God, you would have to get up in the morning and work not to make at least $40,000 a year, taking the skill that you have, whatever that is, and monetizing that and helping another human being figure shit out. I mean, how cool is that, right? So, more information on that, not right now. We'll have some more information next month because we've got a lot of experts that are really coming in and really putting the final polishing touch. I'm going to tell you, I've been working on this thing for over 5 years, and you're only seeing a very tiny piece of something that's been a big, big, big dream of mine, to be able to help as many people as possible. And you can do the same thing, starting with ourselves. If you're feeling angst and anxiety, and that's your emotional state today, I just invite you to listen to the video from yesterday when we did the morning thing every morning that I do Monday through Friday. Just listen to that. Your emotional state is just kind of a warning, or kind of a little of a yellow flag to let you know where you're at. Doesn't mean that you have to be stuck there. It means you're identifying where you're at and the emotions that you're feeling. These changes that are coming in the next 5 to 8 years, they're going to be transformational in a big way, because now the momentum has shifted. Now you go from that momentum to the flywheel effect. And starting in about 2023, the earliest, maybe 2024, we're going to start seeing stuff in our economy, in our social structuring, that will be that flywheel effect. It will be leaps and friggin' bounds of change coming. And moving from mass society to a network society, the next stage, about at 2038, 2040, we will be seeing the change from a network society to an integrated network society. And I'll talk a little bit about this next Saturday on the event that we do next Saturday. I mean, some of that shit's kind of spooky, but it's kind of exciting if you think about it. And so I don't know about those future generations, but I do know that wherever we are today, in our investments, in our real estate, in our business, in our retirement, if you're feeling this angst, a lot of this can be explained to these shifts that are going on. Do your research, do your homework, read the stuff that we've created, the stuff that we've done. We've spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars doing research on a lot of this stuff to help people understand that I saw this coming 5, 6, 7 years ago. I saw these changes coming and was able to identify. And I knew that we had basically 78 million boomers that had jobs and businesses that were going to be functionally obsolete in some point in the future in a lot of ways. And what would we do with those boomers? Well, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to take that life experience that they have, and we're going to create mentors that can help and work in the communities, helping people do things and figure it out while they mentor back, so that they can get tech savvy and they can do stuff on the phone besides hit the button, right? And be cool about doing that. That's really where we can do a big part and make a big impact on some of the stuff that we're doing every day in our own life. And so I kind of look at that a little bit like paying it forward, but I kind of look at it a little bit about just helping people figure shit out. And sometimes that's all you need to do, is just help people figure shit out. All right, just to close, and let me just talk a little bit about what to do versus what not to do. One thing that I don't think you want to do, or at least consider doing, is jump in and start changing and redirecting and reorganizing my retirement account or whatever. I think what you want to do is step back and just take a deep breath and just you're going to have a perspective of change and social shifts and generational shifts. I'm just giving some basic stuff, how it affects us. Look at that assessment that you're doing. Look at where you're at financially, particularly, and look at really where you're going. I mean, we've all got a there, right? Something that we call our North Star that we point to that gives us that purpose and passion. Wherever that is financially, if you feel uncertain, if you feel anxiety, if you feel like you can't figure it out, that's a sign. That's your better part of yourself telling you need more information, you need more time, you need more data. What we've done is created an environment, a community that will allow us all to kind of exchange and share that information. We've put it together in a way that we can take these narrow niche areas that have wide appeal and application, and we can show you how it's working, and we can show you what to consider. If you need help figuring it out, then just say, hey, I need some help, and I'll get on a video conference with you or a phone call or whatever, and hook you up with people that can help you figure those parts out. I think moving forward and going in and doing a lot of shit right now without having a good sense of where you're at and really where you want to go, because where you want to go may change when your perspective about where you really are changes, right? And so I'm just giving you what not to do is a suggestion. Don't go in with the idea that you're going to be making all these changes. It's like an elephant. You eat it one bite at a time and take it slow, a little bit mapping it out so that you're comfortable, right? You're making informed decisions. Look, I think the best thing that any human being can have in life is more choice, right? And one way that I look at that, if you have more money, you have more choices. You have less money, less choices, at least financially. If you have no money, have you ever had a day where you feel like, oh, I have no choice but to do this? We always have a choice. Money is a measure of how many choices we have financially. That's all it is. Money doesn't have an attitude. Money doesn't have an ego. Money doesn't have a personality or an opinion. Money doesn't have an emotion. People have emotion. Don't have any money, I get real emotional, right? Money's money. But it's a reflection that we often identify with, or often what we do is we make our identity about it. It's transference. We're transferring our identity to this frickin' $20 bill or $50 bill. And that's kind of human nature, I think. But I think we get lost in that. And I think when we get lost in that, we've got to step back and figure out maybe there's a different way to look at this shit. And maybe there's a different way that we should approach it. That's all I'm suggesting. I'm not saying it's right and wrong. I'm not saying it's good and bad. I could give a shit about right and wrong. I'd rather be rich and you can be right. I don't care. What I care about is if it's disrupting your life, let's figure that out. And let's figure out how we can get to a place where we just have fun. Remember when you were a kid? Like I remember the thing with the milk and the bottles and the thing with Miller Dairy. That was just freaking cool. I just thought that was the coolest shit in the world. You could have milk delivered. And I can do it today. This morning, Amazon, there's the fresh milk. And it was like I was reliving my whole childhood again. And that's the coolest part of all of this, the nostalgia. And we get to just reconnect and do that kind of cool shit. And when we're helping somebody in their life and we're helping them figure that shit out, there is no better feeling and no cooler thing than doing that. All right. I hope you've enjoyed it. We're going to do one of these on a regular basis. I'm going to bring you a different way to look at stuff, not a better way, not a worse, just a different way. And hopefully you'll see that there's some value that changing our point of view sometimes is a cool thing because we see things different. If you don't like the way something looks, change your point of view. You'll probably see it differently. Have an awesome day. Have a cool day. I think Monday is President's Day. It's a holiday. The market is working, I think, on Monday. Anyway, I've got my new market watch and some stock tips, some really cool things coming out on Tuesday and Wednesday, so pay attention to that. Otherwise, have a bitchin' day, and I will see you all on the flip side. Take care.